My friend, welcome to the world's best kept secret podcast, a podcast that brings you exclusive interviews from experts all over the world with life-changing work that you didn't even know existed. I'm your host, Prima Jobs, a partner for those that are ready to take their life-changing work in front of those whose life or business depends on it. Please follow or subscribe for more. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to the World's Best Kept Secret podcast. I'm Prima Job, your host, and today is all about how do you go through life. Life is full of turns and twists. Life can throw curves at you. You can feel like you've been thrown into a lion's den and don't even know how to get out at some point. I think the highest skill anyone can learn is the ability to bounce back when life feels like it swallowed you. The ability to just bounce back when you feel like life has just stopped happening for you. And for today, I wanted to have a conversation with someone I think you will really love, Gillian Johnston, because that's what she's done for the most of her life. She's gone through the hardest punches in life and somehow has found a way to move on. Her belief is that grief is not a bad thing. Grief is a healing process. Gillian's belief is that it's not what happens to you, is how you move forward. It is how you celebrate life. Gillian believes that you were not born here to go through life and die. She actually believes that you were born to create a legacy and to give those behind you a chance to go through the curves of life and do the things they wanted to do anyway. And so she believes that it's never too late. Never too late to climb that mountain. Never too late to learn how to bike if you want to. Never too late to do anything that you've always wanted to do. I'm super excited to be interviewing Gillian today because I think she comes with a lot of wisdom. And just so you know, I think we'll be having cats joining us because she's also a mother of countless cats. And so hopefully you will see some of them showing up to the show as well. Gillian, welcome to the World's Best Kept Secret podcast. I am beyond thrilled to be interviewing you today.
I'm so excited to be here too, Prima. Thank you so much for letting me loose.
I know I've been mumbling about what you do and how you do it, but I always like to ask the question, how do you help people? There's someone listening and going, Prima, what did you say she does? Those were too many words, meaning what exactly? And so in a minute or so, how do you help people? I want people to be super clear.
Okay, pardon me. All right, my name's Jill or Gillian or Gillian, whatever. I take everything as long as it's not too rude. I'm a life celebrant. When I'm not in front of a computer, I help people actually say goodbyes with funerals. I help people start the next part of their story because I write weddings. But I'm also here to help people when a chapter of their story comes to an end, even when they're moving into a really exciting new part. There's always an element of, is that all it is? That moment of reflection where we grieve, where we second guess everything we're doing. We're at that kind of life crises. What's happening next? And I am here to help you heal through whatever grief process you're experiencing at that time, because it's a natural, healthy process that you should honor, so that you can actually set that compass, be the Captain Jack Sparrow of your life, see that compass spinning around, set your goals, and be able to move forward with hope, with confidence, and with joy, because you've learned from the past. You've carried the wisdom, you've dropped the weight, and you're using that to build your future.
Wow, I love that. I want us to go a little back into your story because I feel like there's a very beautiful story and a very good inspiration for many people who may be at crossroads, who may be like, why is life so hard? I feel like your story gives other people permission to keep moving or to say, I'll go through this. If she did it, I can do it. So would you love to dive a little bit into your story and share with the listener what you've been through?
Okay, in a nutshell. Okay. I have been at certain times, I was a drama student. I've got a Bachelor of Arts degree. I lived in Southeast Asia with my family, but I got married in my late 20s and my life was turned upside down. It was from a very early stage, a physically and mentally abusive one. We had our daughter very, very quickly. And I then spent the next 15 years of my life maintaining a veneer, an outwardly glossy veneer of a very successful marriage because we had our own business and we seemed on the outside to be ticking all the boxes, the nice house, the nice life. But inside it was a very, pardon me, unpleasant, uncomfortable, horrendous experience. I was being gaslit. I was gradually losing my vibrancy. This person that once upon a time was contemplating becoming a stunt woman, who was brave, who was fearless, was suddenly turning into this beige nonentity. If I wore makeup, I was a slut, pardon my French. If I was dressing up, I was because I was looking to find somebody else. If I wasn't looking my best, I was an embarrassment to him. We had our own business. I learned desktop publishing. I learned how to do sales, to invoice people, to actually become a business owner. But I was never good enough as far as he was concerned. At the same time, I was raising our daughter, running after the house and doing everything else. And at the same time, I was being mentally destroyed and being physically assaulted at the same time. It took me 15 years to finally build up the courage. Oh no, at one point when my daughter was an infant, I did phone the police. And that's one of the reasons why I stayed in my marriage for a long time, because when I told them what was going on, my husband, who was very persuasive, said it was a one-off, it'll never happen again, and said, but better not, because the first thing that happens if it did was they would take my daughter away from me and put her into care. And that just floored me because I suddenly thought I had no support. You couldn't talk to anybody because you felt embarrassed, and you also felt you were a failure because everybody thought that you were doing everything so well. And I became very good at hiding bruises and all the rest of it. But the time came when the negative, toxic environment started to be getting focused directly at my daughter. And that's when I eventually thought, I've had enough. And he actually created this perfect storm where he left threatening, aggressive messages on the phone. And I was able to pass them on to the police, and they literally took him out the house in handcuffs, which was great from us as far as the peace and quiet was concerned. But that was actually just the start of the transition, because I then had to build myself back up. I was a single parent. I had no self-esteem, even though we had run our own business. And I knew what I was doing. I did not believe that I had any value, that I deserved to be happy. All I was here to do was get up, get my daughter to school, go to work, come home, look after her, go to sleep, and have that. That was my whole regime. And if I ever felt lost, if I ever felt in the need for just being able to speak to somebody, if I just told them how I was feeling, how lonely I was feeling, one of the things I was told was, well, it was your choice to end your marriage. If you're that unhappy, go back. Mm. That is not the answer. Yeah, but this is one of the things that a lot of people say. Well, if you're so unhappy, why did you leave? Mm-hmm. This is when I actually finally, after being made redundant, a friend of mine who had been nagging me for ages because she was already a celebrant, she said, you ought to become a celebrant because you've got the right, you would resonate with people. Mm-hmm. And eventually I gave in. And one of my first things I had to do when I was training was to write my own funeral. Now, at that point, I was 50 years old. I had 50 years of life.
Mhm.
I wrote my entire life on a single piece of A4 paper with maybe a paragraph on the other side. And that was a wake-up call for me, because I suddenly realized how disconnected I had become from myself. And I sat down and I suddenly realized that I was going through a really dark space. I was grieving. I was grieving for a life that I didn't have, for a life that I should have had, for a life that I wished I'd had. When you get married, you're hoping to have a wonderful, happy marriage. I didn't get that, so I was grieving for that. I was then grieving for all the years that I had invested into having that marriage. And then I was grieving because I felt I had failed. And one of the biggest shocks was when my daughter, who was about 14, 15 at the time, turned around and said, "Mum, I'm so sorry that I was born." And I thought, why? And she said, "Well, if I hadn't been born, you wouldn't have had to stay with Dad for so long." And wow, the head just exploded.
Wow.
And I had to explain to her that the reason she was, before I even met her, before she had even appeared, I wanted her so badly.
Mm.
And that's when I had to suddenly stop. And I had a huge reflection. I wrote down everything I had regretted, all the years I'd been with him, all the things I wish I'd done, and all the rest of it. And then I suddenly realized, if I hadn't gone through all that, I wouldn't have a daughter who I have never stopped telling her she is capable of doing anything she wanted.
Mm.
I've challenged her. I've never been easy with her. There's times that she said, "I'd love to do this." Okay, what's stopping you? And I've been pushing her to explore and be brave in her own time. And she's always able to come back and, unload. But that's when I had to realize I needed to do the same thing. And what I began to realize, I started writing everything I had done in my marriage. I suddenly realized I'm capable of running a business. I have insight. I have compassion. I can help people, because people were still coming to me for advice and wisdom. I am resilient. I have all these gifts. And I suddenly thought, what the blazes am I doing, allowing myself to sit and watch life go by? Because other people were moving on, other people had been divorced, and I was still sitting here. So that's when I thought, no way, this is not happening. And I gave myself a huge shake. And that's now what I do for other people, whether it's helping them with funerals, whether it's helping them. So many people are breaking their hearts when they get married because they're scared of leaving their comfort zones. And then you go into the COVID situation. And that's why I'm now so passionate about using all my skills, everything that I've learned to help me and heal me, to move forward so other people don't have to do this on their own.
Mm.
And I've also got a gold medal for talking for Scotland.
That was my God. Every time I hear your story, I get like shivers. I want to take you back to your daughter when she said, "Mom, I'm so sorry I was born." What was happening for her? Why did she say that?
Okay, first of all, you've got to realize that my daughter had been, when you end a marriage, if there's children, it's not just the couple that are involved, the whole family get involved.
Mm.
Everybody, the whole orbit are involved. She was in a situation where she suddenly didn't have her dad around because he was out of the picture. He was actually told to stay away from us because of the carry on. But she suddenly was watching her mum running around on this hamster wheel of obligation,
Mm.
getting up in the morning, running around to get her to school. She was tired as well because we had a long day, and she was going to school. I was doing everything I can to accommodate her, but I was coming home. I was doing everything to make sure that she was having her social life, that she was still being able to connect with her friends, do her studies, doing all the rest of it. And she kept on saying, "Mum, what are you doing? Where's your life?" And she was suddenly aware that, and I was actually, without realizing it, putting a form of guilt on her, because she was feeling guilty that I wasn't living, because she felt like she was an obligation. And I had to pull myself out of that, because that is something I've never wanted her to feel like. And it was to sit down with her and be honest with her, and to have that conversation, and just remind her that everything I do for her was from love. It wasn't because I was sacrificing anything. And I had to put it back to her to say, I choose to do this for you because you are so important to me. And I had to do so much work for her, but it took her a long time to build trust in other people. And even now, whenever she sometimes gets triggers, even now. I mean, she's a very successful woman in her own right. I mean, she's in her 30s. Come on, we're not talking about a child any longer. But there's times when she does feel things trigger back. But she now knows that she can sit and talk to me, and she's not going to be diminished in any way. She's not going to be told what to do, but she has the space to actually just do a huge brain dump, because a lot of the time what we need is just that space just to sit down and open up and just let everything fall out, to clarify it. And the result is we've got a really strong, really healthy relationship. It's not always respectful. We do have we can laugh at each other, we can tease each other ridiculously, and one of us is as bad as the other, which is great. But it was to actually remind her that she was valuable and valuable, viable, and all the rest. The one thing she did say was, though, she would never, ever be in a situation where she would feel totally dependent on another person for her identity. She would never let another person be the reason, that would be the person that would dictate her worth and her truths. She has been able to have people in her life who can see who she is so that she can rise. And she has people who value her so that she can value them too on an equal basis. So it's a good thing. And I feel so proud of her. But I feel proud of myself because I was able to make sure that she was able to drop those weights too.
When I first talked to you, you sent me a voice clip, and I was like, whoa. I think it was like 3 minutes. I was like, wow. Can you say what you told me in that voice clip to the person who's listening? I want them to hear your story in like 1 minute or 2 minutes. I felt like that was
okay.
like, Jesus, you give me this life for 1 minute and I'm flat dead. Can you go through that in like a minute or 2? My God,
okay, let's see.
What
am I? I used to be the survivor of a physically, mentally abusive marriage. I am now a flourishing thriver as a result of coming through and dropping the grief. I've been a single parent. I have become a life celebrant. I help people who are actually coming through grief, who are coming through transitions, so that they can rise and thrive and shine, because life is too damn short to do anything else. It's a beast. I am oh gosh, what did I say in 3 minutes? I just don't believe that we have got choice at all times. Survival is a temporary state of being. It's somewhere that we go when we're grieving. It's a way of recovering, so that we can gather our senses, make sense of what we've come through, and then we choose, or we don't, but we can choose. And I'm sure everybody that listens to your podcast, Prima, are looking because they want to move forward and be the owners and the authors of their stories. We can choose to step forward, to thrive and to flourish and to shine and to grow. The horizon is always open. And it's how we look at it. It's either going to be open and it's going to be grimly threatening because it's open, or it's going to be open and full of promise because there's no limits apart from what we put in our head.
Wow.
And we can shed that.
Wow. Tell me more about you said to me, pretty much just not grief. It's not just death. It is life crisis. So tell
Mhm.
tell us the categories of crisis. Like, how do I know that I'm in a crisis? Sometimes I feel like my world is coming to an end. So what are the categories of people that need your help? What are they
Okay.
going through? What are the crisis seasons, segments? Like, I want people to
Mhm.
know, like, your work and who it's for and what those transitions are in life.
All right. I work with everybody. Pardon me, I've got a frog in my throat. Stories. All our stories have got chapters.
Mm.
We have experienced grief in different levels all our lives.
Mm.
From the child who loses their first pacifier, they grieve for that. You grieve through various categories of school friends.
Mm.
You can experience grief when a friendship ends. You can experience grief when that first romance ends, or that 31st romance ends. You can experience grief when you leave the security and safety of being in high school to go into maybe further education or your first job. You can grieve when you've been in a job where you're comfortable, you know who you are, where you are, and how you're doing it. The job comes to an end. The business folds. The business relocates. You made redundant. You decide to quit. It's not all something that happens to you passively. It's sometimes a lot of it can be because you've made that decision that things have got to come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
It can be empty nest syndrome. You've been so devoted to your family. They grow up, you suddenly think, well, what am I doing?
Mm.
You can be at the situation where you get divorced.
Mm.
A spouse dies, a friend dies, a parent dies, a pet dies.
Mm.
You can grieve even before something comes to an end. Somebody's growing ill, and you know there's not going to be a time of recovery, and you're actually grieving in advance of that inevitable loss. You can, without realizing it, start to grieve when you realize that the relationship you're in is transitioning and it's no longer going to be the relationship it was. In fact, it's coming to a point where it is drawing to a natural end. And sometimes you're just waiting. There are so many reasons for grieving. You grieve if your first ever car, you loved that car, and then you sell it. And
Mm.
then the next time you've got a set of car keys in your hand, you look at them, you think, these aren't my keys. Because you've got to build that relationship with that new car. You grieve for anything. It doesn't matter. But the big life-changing things can be somebody dies. That's a fundamental one. And it can be somebody who can be your contemporary. It can be somebody who's been a mentor. And that's not always a positive one. We often grow because we've got people who are really hard taskmasters. And when you suddenly don't have that voice of criticism, that voice that you've been fighting to beat, and it's stilled, you suddenly think, what do I do now? Somebody that you know, or even you hear in the news, somebody that's been really fit or really full of joy, and they have died without any warning, and they're younger than you, you suddenly think, wow, the clock in your head starts ticking. Or you have a major birthday.
Mm.
Think of how many people sit with that biological clock in their head going, oh, if I don't do it now, it's going to be too late. And we all, we think about that. Or if you're sitting in a job that you don't like, but it's something that's paying the bills and you're going through the motions and you think, only X amount of more years until I've retired. And those bucket lists get bigger and longer. And all those dreams grow dustier and dustier because you're putting them to one side because you've told yourself, get sensible, be real. Who am I kidding? And something happens that shakes up this very narrow, very safe, very limiting journey, this path that you've been following. And you suddenly realize those boundaries are flimsy and that you can change them. And that's when you're at the point you think, do I stay? Do I go? How do I go forward?
Mm.
And that's when you get to, that's why a lot of people talk about things like midlife crises, why, the standard joke, the guy goes out and buys a big fast car or the motorbike or, you know, what have you. I mean, my marriage ended when I was in my mid-40s, well, my early 40s. And the funny thing was that a lot of marriages at my daughter's year at school all ended about the same time. And the funny thing was, the marriages ended at the instigation of the wives, because they had come to that stage of thinking, there's got to be more. I don't want to be the little wife. I want to be the person. And they're looking at the person they were with, and the marriage wasn't giving them, neither of them were feeding each other
Mm-hmm.
in a way that was going to flourish. And so marriages ended. And guess what? Most of the people that I've met since then, they're all thriving in different directions, totally diametrically opposite to one another. And they're great and they're happy. And that's what we need. And that's where the crises are. I'm not advocating everybody suddenly divorce or anything like that. But what I'm saying is you've got to, every so often, you're entitled to sit down and give yourself a chance to actually check the direction you're going. Are you going in a direction that you're going? Is the direction you're going in the one that you chose, or was it chosen for you because you were expected to follow the family traditions, or were you expected to, because you were here, you're supposed to do that? You're a doctor, you're a lawyer, but you really want to be a barista and have your own cafe. What's stopping you? You want to be an artist. You want to write that novel. You want to go trekking through the mountains in Nepal. Why don't you? I'm not saying you're going to end up running up and down Everest, but what's to stop you from exploring those options? Maybe even closer to home. I mean, I live in Scotland. I don't need to go to Nepal. I can go up a lumpy piece of hill, anywhere. But I believe that we need to get rid of the limitations, review ourselves, and actually start moving forward. And that's why when you start moving, when you're grieving, it's a brilliant way of taking a breathing space to say, okay, this is where I've been. This is what I've done. How much have I learned from it? How happy am I? What can I do to move forward? And even better, knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect going forward. There's going to be crises. There are going to be other hiccups. There's going to be challenges. But if I have the wisdom to actually take everything that I've experienced to this point, that's made me the person that I am now, I can go forward and I can be anything I want to be because I choose to take that chance.
That's powerful. I was interested in what you said when I asked you before. When I asked you before, you said people are moving around with masks. And this is the problem. That people have mask after mask and mask after mask. The problem is at one point when one mask falls off, they don't know how to bounce back. People have their identity coupled up in masks after masks after masks. And that is why sometimes a crisis can be harder to recover from because of the layers and layers of masks, which is really what causes people to grieve and have issues, even like bouncing back to truly creating a masterful life. Could you help me go through that piece?
Yeah, and thanks for reminding me of that. We do wear masks. From the minute we're born, we wear masks. You're somebody's son, you're somebody's daughter, you become somebody's sibling, you become the student, you become the this, you become the that, you become the wife or the husband or the parent or it doesn't matter. The moment you can identify yourself with the word the at the beginning, you know you're wearing a mask. And that's okay. Masks, we've been wearing masks physically since time began. In ancient Greece, when they were having their theatres, when they were filling the beautiful theatres in Athens and all the rest of it with plays, the actors wore masks. the comic and the tragic masks. They're called persona. Per as in through and sona, sound. They were basically the megaphones that the actors used, so people at the back row could hear what they were saying, and they could also see from a distance whether they were comic or tragic. We have taken persona and adopted them as being permanent parts of who we are. One of my problems when I was in single parent mode was that I forgot that I could take off the persona of being the mum when my daughter was at school. Or I didn't have to be full-time mum when she was with her friends. It didn't mean that I couldn't, if, for example, a phone call came and I had to react, I could instantly take that persona back on and go back into full-time, full-blown mum mode. When I'm a celebrant, if I'm conducting a wedding or I'm conducting a funeral, I am, for that period, wearing my celebrant persona. I do not need to wear that persona all the time. When I'm out gardening, I'm in gardening mode because I'm Jill. If I'm happy and all of it, I'm just Jill. I don't have to hide behind masks. We can choose. That doesn't mean we've got to be completely exposed to the world so that everybody can see us at our most vulnerable. Vulnerability is a fantastically brave, strong thing to have. And there's a wonderful liberation to actually explain that to people. But we don't need to be that way all the time. So it's okay to have that degree of protection, if you like. But when, for example, you are no longer able to identify as being the doctor, the parent, the child, the whatever, you are suddenly walking that tightrope and you don't have a safety net of being able to say, I'm working within these parameters any longer. And that's when you can have a lot of crises. A lot of people don't want to move forward. They go into a point of just surviving, getting through every day as best they can. They just shut themselves back further and further, feeling helpless because they don't have that same impetus, that same sense of identity any longer. And they slow down. They, instead of becoming holding center stage in their story, they're gradually marginalized to the sides, and then they end up sitting in the audience at the very back of the theatre, watching what should be their life, carrying on without them. Other people are taking center stage. We can. I love being able to bring people back into finding that purpose that they've already got, because we're born with this innate sense, this innate desire to thrive and to flourish. And reconnecting with that flame, that passion that's there. And it can sometimes be very intangible. It might just be that you love gardening, you want to do that, you know, or you love music. And I used to play I used to play the piano. I've not done it in years. What's stopping you from taking it back? You know, I love cooking. Oh, I've not cooked in ages. Well, what's stopping you from maybe taking a course and reigniting that passion? What's stopping you from doing these things? I love to travel, but I just don't like doing it on my own. There are groups you can connect. There are so many ways of actually starting to spark that. Well, even not even spark, because you've always got this ember in your heart, in your core. And sometimes it just needs that little burst of oxygen to turn that spark, that ember, into a flame so that it can burn, so you can lighten yourself up and so you can remember my story. It's like all good books, if you're reading them that are really engrossing, they always have these dark areas. You think, I really don't want to be reading this part, and you want to get through it as quickly as possible. But when you come through that part, the rest of it, you suddenly think, this is wonderful. So that's what.
I love that answer. Gillian, you told me that grief is a good thing and people should grieve. Can you explain why you think grief is a bad thing? Because most of us, when we are grieving, we just want to do something to stop it. We just want to take some pills to feel better. We just feel like some people even feel like it's a sign of weakness. We want to grieve until we're like, okay, how do we stop this? Can you explain what you mean when you say you need to grieve because grief is good?
It's a healthy reaction. It's the same reaction that you have. See, if you stubbed your toes on the side of the bed in the morning, what's the reaction you have? Everyone's going to have a very powerful reaction to it. And you've got, all you can do is run it through until that pain goes. That's what grief is. It is a really visceral reaction. Not everybody feels it the same way, but that's okay. If you keep it down, if you hold that down, do you know what's going to happen? Your body's going to grieve for you. You're going to start developing things. Tension, stress, headaches, backaches, ulcers, high blood pressure. Need I go on? The physiological ramifications of not letting go of that grief can be palpable and long-term negative effects going in the rest of your life. You trust your grief. It's a healthy, healing, compassionate process that you should allow and trust, because when you trust it, you are giving yourself the same space and grace that you would give yourself if you had broken your leg and knew you've got nothing else to do other than let that bone and those muscles heal. That's what grief is, and that's why it's healthy.
That's powerful. Like, grief is like a wound, and that wound, there is nothing you're going to do to stop it from its healing process. So grief is a healing process, and you don't try to stop it because you don't have to. I love that. I love that. You say to me last time when we had a chat that people need to find a way to celebrate life in the most trying times. I would love for you to break that down a little bit, because in the most trying times, celebration is not what comes to us. So can you please explain to us how we can celebrate life when we've just lost a marriage? How do you celebrate life from that?
Okay, first of all, you have had a marriage. You have had something that grew. You were brave. You took a chance. The things that you learned, you can sit down and actually take all the positives from that. Yeah, it may not have lasted. You may have ended the marriage on an amicable terms, in which case you both deserve to shine because you've done something well. Even if it's not an amicable thing, what you can turn around and say is, I've done it. I took a chance. And guess what? I am not going to look back. I have lived. I can't turn the back. I can't change what's happened, but I can learn from it so that the next time I meet someone, I'm going to meet somebody who is going to see me for who I am, who's going to value me for who I am, and I'm going to value myself and value them and make sure I don't make the same mistakes that I did before. Because that's where the wisdom is. And you also make sure that you're not going to go into a situation where you are going to have to repeat things that you don't want to be repeating.
Wow.
That's what it is.
What did I learn from this? You know, I really love how you look at it. Okay, there's a life. Someone has died.
Okay.
What can I celebrate about their life?
Okay,
marriage
that person who's died.
How can I celebrate my brevity in taking the chance? The worst of my child has died.
Yeah.
Can I celebrate from that? And what can I do better with the next child? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every connection that we get is a gift. We are social creatures. Everything that connects us to another person. And this is, you're talking to somebody who is very comfortable in their own company. But every life is a lesson to learn from. When you see people whose stories have been crammed to the gunnels with adventure and enthusiasm and curiosity, even it doesn't matter how long they've lived, they have lived a lifetime of experiences. They've had a lifetime. We are born to have lifetimes of experience.
Wow.
And that's how we encourage people to live, even when we're not around. But I'm still here and I've got a masterpiece yet to write, so. Story's not over yet.
I wanted you to take us like in a minute or two, the process of going through a crisis. I know last time we talked and you had like some interesting steps that, how to celebrate, change my mentality, even like if I was in a crisis today, maybe it's midlife, or maybe I just hit menopause and I was like, oh, right, I didn't see that coming. Take me through that process of like step 1 to 5, or it's gotta be okay. There's a process for this. It's gotta be okay. I got you. But we have like 2 minutes for that.
Okay, first of all, it's okay to suddenly think, oh my God, what's happening? Give yourself full permission to have a meltdown. Get it out of your system. Pardon me, am I getting a bit exuberant here? It's okay to have a knee-jerk reaction. We have got knee-jerk reactions. They're the things that saved us from the big, scary beasts that were prowling on the savannah. And we still have that internal health and safety thing. So yes, we're allowed to take this immediate kind of, because it's a way of saying, are we safe? Then if it's a situation for maybe facing retirement, facing menopause, you suddenly think, oh my God, I'm getting old. Oh my God, my life's over. Everything I wanted is gone. Oh, where's it gone? Where's all the time gone? And do you know something? I'm taking the mic here, but you're allowed to do that too. Because then what you can turn around and say is, get a grip. I've got this. I've got that. I've got the other. I've been through that. Huge. I mean, okay, sorry for all you ladies who are menopausal, and I'm sympathizing with you. I didn't even know I went through menopause. I just sailed through it. Not everybody's going to do it, I know. But, I still, as I said, our lives are chapters. So when a chapter ends, you think, something, that's fine. I would not want to be a 20-year-old Jill any longer. My God, did she go through a lot? She was fun. But I would only want to go through her again if I had what I've got in my head now. We are allowed to have our crises. The minute we stop having crises, we stop living. But it's being able to steer into them, thinking, something, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to get through it. We either get through it, or we go round it, or we go over it, or we get stuck by it. I ain't getting stuck. And I want to encourage everybody to find their way. One of my biggest heroes was Bruce Lee, and his analogy, be like water. And that's it. You flow around something, you flow over it, you erode it, you blow it away, but you don't get damned by it, because build up and then you push it out the way. Crises are a way of reminding you that you're alive. And it's a way of coming back and tapping into that indomitable power that you have. Sometimes it's a bit of a breakdown in communication, but it can be reconnected. And that's why I help you to come back into that powerful person that's you are.
Wow. It's been a great conversation, Gillian. As we bring this to a close, last time when I had a chat with you, you said you can create a truly masterful life despite the grief and troubles of the day. If there was someone on this, the other end of listening to this show going, I don't know if I still have that masterful life. I don't know if I still have what it takes to climb Mount Elgon. I don't know that if I'm dead, 3 years later, I will be remembered as somebody who had a masterful life. What would be your last words to them?
I would say you're always the author of your story. You can make it a page-turning thriller. You do have that power. Don't be afraid to take a chance. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. And do you know something? You don't need to do it on your own either. If you need support, if you're needing help, if you're needing a safe space to say, I'm going through a really bad time. I just need somebody, I need a safe space. Reach out and get that safe space. Do not live locked in your head, because that's a prison.
Mm.
And nobody wants to live in a prison. You deserve to be free. You deserve to liberate yourself. And that's why I'm here.
Wow. For the person who's listening, where should they go to connect with your work if they were interested in having your support going through grief or a crisis in their life, and they were like, I hope she can help me? Where should they go to find your work?
All right. Well, you can find me on social media, on Facebook or Instagram. I did have a website, but I've taken it down because it needs to get revamped. I offer for anybody who just wants to dip your toes in, you can have a 20-minute obligation-free call with me, just to sit and talk with me. And then what we could do, I do offer options. I've got unstuck power hours where we can actually sit and go really deep, as a one-off, or you can even have a series of them. If you're wanting to break the routines and habits that are keeping you in that place that you know you want to move forward, I've got a program called the Routine Overhaul Program. But again, these are options. But what we also do is I make sure that anybody who works with me, we're getting the best option in the first place. So that's why I offer 20 minutes for you to talk to me, to get a feel for how I am, who you are, and just make sure that you know that when you work with me, that you've got a pair of hands that are going to look after you and give you the accountability as well. I'm not going to sugarcoat, because if sometimes you're pushing yourself in that place, I'm going to call you out. But if you're ready to have that kind of accountability, to actually say, I need that mental shove. You can always shove back, obviously, but that's where we start.
I love it. Every other way you can get in touch with Gillian will be in the show notes. So if you're watching this on a podcast platform in audio, or if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to scroll through the show notes, and you should find ways to reach out to Gillian. She's on social media. She has a free call she's offering. No obligation. Just have a chat. Yeah. And if you think that she's the right person to help you through your grief, then you move forward. Yeah, I've enjoyed my time with you, Gillian. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be on the podcast.
It's a joy. The one thing I would say to you is, if anybody reaches out, decide that you are ready, that this is what you want. Because if you don't want it, if you're coming in for the wrong reasons, until you're ready to move forward and have that fire in your belly, that's when we're talking. Because that's it. And also, if you jump in, you'll also maybe get photobombed by my cats. That's
all right. I'm so excited that you came today. To you who is listening, you could have been on nearly another podcast. You chose this one, and so
thank you.
I really thank you for listening in. I thank you for staying with us. And if Gillian's message has blessed you, or if you know anyone in your life that is battling a life crisis and would love self-harm, somebody that has been through it, been around it, been all over it, Gillian, her life is grief. She's gone through grief. She's helped people go through grief, countless people for a decade who've lost their loved ones, been through life's hardest moments, and she's breathed and lived it. She's someone who's done it from the school of hard knocks, and so I couldn't recommend anyone better. So grab a free call with her and have a conversation, obligation free. If she's someone that is going to help you through that life jump, that life transition, go for it. As Gillian would say, life happens, things happen, chapters come and go, but your life carries on. Thank you for today. I will talk to you next time.
Thank you.
That is it, my friend. To listen to more exclusive interviews like this one, simply go to the world's best kept secret podcast.com and select interviews based on preferred topic.